Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Ahmedabad Management Association, it's a pleasure to welcome you all on this Sunday morning talk, a discussion on a book written by Dr. Bharat Patel, that is Intent of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. As you are aware, and this particular talk is held under the auspices of a center of our Mamta AMS Center for Indian Wisdom, which is one of our activity centers. And under this Center for Indian Wisdom, we have had many talks on Indian Wisdom Weeks, talks by different Swamijis and spiritual persons. So this is a similar kind of activity, but from a slightly different angle. This session will be moderated by Mr. Atul Parekh, a former senior banker, and he's a faculty with the Bank of Baroda Staff College. He's also a faculty of our diploma programs and the member of our programs committee. And Mr. Dr. Bharat Patel, who has written this book, basically he's from Ahmedabad. He studied in St. Xavier's College, and I think in the 70s he went to USA, and he's been there in New Jersey, and he had his particular interest in spirituality, our Indian wisdom, our prized jewels, and his love for the Sanskrit language. That made him write this book, and as he told me, the process got accelerated during the COVID times, that times where he could really focus on it, and because it's a massive attempt, it's 1,200 pages, of commentary written in English, and this was released at a wonderful ceremony at the Gujarat Vishwakosh Trust a few weeks ago. It was on 24th November, and the foreword has been written by Shri Guruji Narayan and Dr. Gautam Bhai Patel, a renowned Sanskrit scholar. And as I mentioned, Atul Bhai will be moderating this talk. So without taking any of your time, I will hand it over to Atul Bhai. But before that, I'll welcome the author and today's speaker, with a memento on your behalf. Atul Bhai, all yours. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. The Honorable Chief Guest, the principal speaker on the very interesting topic, Dr. Bharat Bhai Patel, the AMA well-known figure, President Mr. Arya, our past President is Rohit Bhai Patel. And how should I address you guys, because I belong to one of you here as an audience. I can say respected seekers of happiness, seekers of bliss, seekers of peace, or seekers of Satchidanand, and seekers of the self-realization. And for this quest and the hunger, we have a very right personality today, Dr. Bharat Patel. As Radiaji already said, that his roots are in the soil of Ahmedabad. He studied in Xavier schools. Thereafter, he did his engineering, and he both in school board as well as in engineering, he topped the list, and then migrated to US and finished his ME in 1968 from New Jersey, and did his doctorate in engineering thereafter. And thereafter, for the last 4 decades, he has led a very illustrious career. Okay. He was on the senior executives in the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities, New Jersey Department of Energy, and New Jersey Department of Commerce, Energy, and Economic Development. And he was also instrumental in development and the implementing of the policies in the sphere of energy, commerce, and economic policies. Okay. He served as an associate professor also as an academic experience in electrical engineering at New Jersey Institute of Technology. Despite his school background in St. Xavier's, okay, Dr. Patel has a great love for the Sanskrit, and he, at a very young age, he learned the Sanskrit and mastered the language, and thereafter he dived into the deep study of the Indian spiritual science, Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita. Not only that, he has a rigorous study of various spiritual masters, the books they have written on the eminence like Adi Sankaracharya, Sri Ramanujacharya, Sri Vallabhacharya, Swami Atmanand Muniji, Swami Vivekanandji, Swami Chidanandji, Swami Chinmayanandji, Swami Sivanandji, and the list goes on actually. And he has also published before this intent of Bhagavad Gita, essence of Bhagavad Gita book. Right? Dr. Patel has been a global trotter with the interest in the micro details of all the places that he visits. He is currently settled in the Washington, and having spent more than 4 decades, Dr. Patel has fostered there the interest of our nation, the ancient heritage of religion, and the rich cultural values of India. His recent publications, the book of the intent of the Bhagavad Gita, I'll give his creations, a very magnificent creation, very wonderful creation that I just browsed through few pages. And the intent of Bhagavad Gita is the nectar of his 6 decades of study of Bhagavad Gita. Okay. He has inherited the spiritual genes from his grandfather, his father, and Lord Krishna said to Arjuna that he has gone through the myriads of the births, right, before his current avatar. And similarly, Sri Bharat is also carrying the torch of the Hindu Sanatan Dharma, may be inherited through his several sanskars of this past birth in the evolution process. The intent of publishing this book is to annihilate the misinterpretations and sometimes misguiding meanings of what Lord Krishna intends to reveal us for the ultimate purpose of the wisdom of life. Okay. The Rig Veda mentions that Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti. The truth is one expressed in many ways. The liberty, the freedom of expression in his views with the interpretations are expressed in these connotations. Okay. Bharat has said in his books that only the fire of knowledge can burn the deep-rooted ego and I amness, which is the cause of karmic bondages of the ignorance. He has distinctly clarified and explained the human constructs of dharma, artha, kama, moksha, liberation, karma, doership, Sankhya Yoga, and nature of karma, etc. in this book. The remarkable feature of the book is the detailed glossary of Vedantic terms prepared with lots of hard work, spread over 82 pages. Right. Bharat was immensely inspired and influenced by Swami Atmanand Muniji in his childhood. He used to visit their home, and from that he got the inspirations and dived into and learned the Sanskrit and also learned thereafter the Upanishads and Indian philosophy. He has emphasized that interpretation of ancient Sanskrit words be applied in the current reality of validation, that is the yatharth and justified. It's true that no English words that conveys the true meaning of Brahma. Okay. Braha means pervasive, and Brahmana is the one who is all-pervasive, all omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, who is supreme power, which is consistently evolving through the qualified Brahma as a power of creation, sustenance, and the regenerations. Okay. In our Upanishad or Rig Veda, it is mentioned, the last part of it, as is the atom, so is the universe. As is the atom, so is the universe. As is the human body, so is the cosmic body. As is the human mind, so is the cosmic mind. And as is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. For oneness in the Atma, through concentration of mind, Bharat Bhai has established various useful prayers. That is, prayers for the universal prayer, prayer for relinquishing the attachment, prayer for desireless, prayer to remove the grief, prayer to control anger, for total renunciation, and restraining the ego, besides strengthening of the mind. I believe this is the true essence of Bhagavad Gita. And I am very happy to present Dr. Bharat Patel, and we with great ovation, I think, we give a warm welcome on these occasions. Right. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to Dr. Bharat Patel. Maybe you have some questions related to his talk, confusions, then he will be very happy to clarify it. I'll also, if I have a confusion, on your behalf, let's become Arjun today, all of us, and then I will raise some question as well. Thank you very much. Yeah, please.
Respected Divyesh Bhai, respected Atul Bhai, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, I must thank the AMA for inviting me to talk about my views on what the intent of Srimad Bhagavad Gita is. I was born and raised in the city of Ahmedabad, just a stone throw away. In the 50s and 60s, I spent my time when the population of Ahmedabad was about 200,000. Everybody knew everybody, you know. Today is quite different. Even though we have been visiting Ahmedabad, you know, every 2-3 years, you know. I was fortunate and blessed to be born in a techno-adhyatmic family. My dad, my grandfather, my uncles, they were all highly educated as well as deeply involved in studying and practicing Adhyatmic knowledge that was gained by them through parampara and also through some of the saints who would come and visit us. I was very young when I was almost 8-9 years old, you know. We had Swami Atmanand Muni visit us frequently, you know, in the summers. And he sort of imbibed in me the quest for learning Sanskrit. Now, I was brought up in the Jesuit system, first in Mount Carmel and then St. Xavier's High School, you know, and later on in Xavier's College and then LD Engineering, you know. So I had little exposure to other than English. I mean, we had Gujarati language as the secondary language, you know. But in SSC, I was very close to one of the padris at Xavier's, you know, Father Silvera. So he said that, look, you need to take a subject that can score very high so that we can continue the good work that the students of Xavier's had done in 61 and 62. You know, in 61 and 62, students from Xavier's had topped the SSC, you know. So we were encouraged that we take a language, either French or Sanskrit, you know, which would be scoring, you know, we can score high, you know. So I asked my dad, I said, look, I need to learn Sanskrit, you know. So he suggested that why don't you go and learn from Mr. K.K. Shastri. So my dad had called him up. K.K. Shastri didn't have time, obviously, he was a very busy guy. So he said, my father, Dada, can teach. So Dada, Kashiram Shastri, he was about 91 years old, So we picked a date in summer of 1962, to go and see him, So the first day I go, he's sitting on the porch, So I go down, I bow down to his feet, And he says, get out. So I was really surprised. Why would he tell me to go away, So I asked his grandson, I said, why did Dada say to leave, So he said, did you eat kanda lasan? So I said, sure. So he said, tomorrow don't eat kanda lasan and come, So next day I went, same time, 1 o'clock, But the amazing thing in my life was that I had no knowledge about Sanskrit. I knew the Sanskrit alphabets, But within less than 30 days, I was able to fluently converse in Sanskrit. 2 small books he gave me. Now, when you're young, it is very easy to memorize, So the first book he gave me was Sandhi Shastra. Sandhi kemni karvi. How do you compound words, Very simple, It was both in Gadya and Padya, And being a 15-year-old boy, it was very easy, 20 pages. Next day it was all memorized, And the third day he says, here is a Shabda Rupavali, conjugations of Akarant, Ukarant, Ikarant, Same, 25, 30 pages. Memorized. So within a week, 2 things I memorized, And then the next thing he did was he gave me a book. Actually, he gave me 2 books. One book was that gave different roots of Sanskrit words and their meanings, like a dictionary. It wasn't a complete dictionary, but I think was a smaller version of some basic Sanskrit roots that are useful on a day-to-day basis, and which are used mostly in the Vedantic literature. And the other one he gave was a book that had different verses, from which in the SSC exam they ask questions, So once I knew how to do the sandhi and once I knew how to do the conjugations, it was very easy, that. So within 20, 30 days, I learned. So that was my exposure to Sanskrit. And in fact, that was very helpful for me in the SSC exams to score pretty high, So my interest for Sanskrit never stopped. Even though I went to engineering, I always was interested in reading Vedantic literature, Upanishad literature, And I was influenced a lot in those early developmental years from Adi Shankaracharya. I spent a lot of time reading his work, and my thoughts that are presented in this book are pretty consistent with what Adi Shankaracharya said, What I've tried to do is try to fill in some places where Adi Shankaracharya and other great thinkers have been silent, So I tried to make an effort, to try to come up with some response. I went to US in '68, and then of course got busy with studies and got married in '70 and raising children and working, But during the entire time, I spent time reading all these great people, Ramanujacharya, Vallabhacharya, And the other one I spent a lot of time was Lokmanya Tilak, Gita Rahasya by Mr. Tilak, About 1600 pages. I went through it once. I had lots of questions, so I said, I will read it again and again. So I went through it almost 7 times because it raised so many questions in my mind, what Tilak, Sri Tilak was saying, Now, in my comment here, a lot of the thing that I'm saying is commenting on Sri Tilak. I've not mentioned his name because who am I? I'm a technocrat, I'm not, I don't profess to be a preceptor, I did it as a intellectual exercise, to try to put together something based on my 40, 50, 60 years of studies. Now, I wanted to write this way back 40 years ago, synthesize what Bhagavad Gita, what Bhagavan was saying in Bhagavad Gita, but never, unfortunately, never had the time to do it because of all the obligations that one has to go through, However, come 2020, and we have COVID. So we are stuck at this lockdown. So that gave me the perfect opportunity. So this work, if we didn't have COVID, probably I would never have done it, And obviously, spent a lot of time. I estimated roughly like 12,000 hours that I spent, to trying to put together, But one of the issues that was bothering me was I can understand about the foreigners, people in Europe and America, Germany. They may not know how to pronounce the transliterated Sanskrit. Now, I said Sanskrit, okay? I would normally say Sanskrit. Because unlike any other language, Sanskrit is a vibrational language. The sound quality of the syllables, they affect and influence human psychology and also physiology. The vibrations of the syllables have frequencies that help us begin to resonate and align ourselves with universal goodness and purpose. Simple example. If you do not pronounce om properly, the impact will never be felt. So every syllable in Sanskrit has to be pronounced properly. Unfortunately, a lot of people, and I can, talk about YOGA, what do they call? Yoga. It's not yoga, it is yoga. Our people who speak Hindi, Gujarati, Sanskrit, if they have the Devanagari Lipi word, they will pronounce it properly. When it says yoga, they'll say yoga. But when it is written in English, they'll say yoga. And one of the things that really bothered me was this whole movement of the Hare Krishna movement, right? Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. What is that? It's Ram and it's Krishna. Krishna, when they say Krishna, was Krishna's sister. And we are praying to Krishna's sister. That's what they're doing, And people don't realize that, but that's how they start talking about, So that bothered me. So when I was writing, I said, look, I need to be mindful of the resonance of the words that are put in English, which are as accurate as possible, So when I did the draft work, I think I completed sometime in April of this year, And I felt that as a technocrat or techno-adhyatmic person, I'm just like any of the person here in the audience, I'm not a guru, I'm not a sage, I'm just a seeker trying to figure out how do I achieve the inner peace that is spoken about in Bhagavad Gita, So when I started to write, I truncated the A's from all the words that people use, R-A-M-A, so I took out A, Karma, I put K-A-R-M. Likewise, all the words, and probably there are like 4,500 words, Sanskrit words that are transliterated. Now I knew that the Western culture, about 200 years ago, 300 years ago, the Germans and mostly the Britishers, wanted to translate most of the Sanskrit scriptures, So they had an issue because everybody who was writing had a different issue, So they established, I guess, the guy was Monier Williams, Trevelyan, and all those guys in Britain at Oxford University. They spent almost 10 years, to come up with transliteration of Sanskrit alphabets, English is 26 alphabets, Sanskrit 48. So they had to come up with diacritics to use English. And that's what they did. So a lot of literature was transliterated and written in English with diacritics. Look what happens. After 200 years, all the diacritics go away. So now people, they read K-A-R-M-A as karma. But when you use it in a diacritic fashion under IASC standard, it is karma. M-A is ma, not ma. To ma, then they have a bar on top of A, So I figured that I want to be true to the pronunciation of this Sanskrit word. So where there was a stress like so I just put double A's, or single A for short A, and the same thing with other vowels, So I wrote the whole thing, about 500,000 words, And it was sent to Gujarat Vishwakosh, They were very kind. It was also sent to Narayan Guruji, who has been a frequent speaker here, and it's written like 600 books. He's written a unique book, like 745 verse Bhagavad Gita. I mean, he spent a lot of time trying to pull out those 45 additional verses, Of course, if you look at Adi Shankaracharya, he had only 700 verses, and that's what I've stayed with, So this book only addresses the 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita, So Narayan Guruji agreed to review, and Gujarat Vishwakosh sent it to Dr. Gautam Patel. It's a Veda Ratna. He was a professor at Xavier's, So he reviewed it, and then he writes a 2-pager Gujarati note, sends it to Kumar Balbhai Desai, who is the managing trustee of Vishwakosh, and said, look, ગુજરાતીમાં લખ્યું કે ભરતભાઈ જે લખ્યું છે તે આપણાથી પબ્લિશ ના કરી શકાય. આ ચોપડી પર ઘણું કામ કરવું પડશે, ઓછામાં 3 થી 4 વર્ષ લાગશે. So I was a little bit, so Prakash Bhagwati sent me a copy of that note, and I said, I didn't see, he didn't tell why. I mean, he gave one example, you know. So I started to write a response that why I did the way I did. You know, not one person cannot change the world, but I thought maybe I should make an effort so that people will not use the word, will use the word as yoga, and they will not say yoga. You know, in America or here, even Indians say, oh, my karma is not good, you know. It is not karma, it is karma, you know. So use, I mean, you're born in India, your language is Gujarati or Hindi or Marathi, you know, you should be using the right pronunciation, you know. So Gautam Bhai calls me one night, and he says, I wrote this, that, and I think that what you should do is change it. You should use the IAST standard, the international standard of Sanskrit transliteration, you know. And he was trying to convince me, you know. And he gave in, the first thing he said was, you know, and I respected Dr. Radhakrishnan, you know, I read his books. And he said Dr. Radhakrishnan used IAST when he was writing his commentary on Bhagavad Gita, you know. So that sort of led me to think that maybe I should follow him. And the other convincing thing he said was that, look, this book, I'm not commenting on the contents of the book, you know, I'm talking about how it is presented. If this book gets, for it to have an international status, for people to appreciate what is written, change it to IAST standard, you know. Now, I personally have problems with IAST because, for instance, the one ru, right, ru, so I was taught that it's ru, not re. But under IAST standard, it is re, which is incorrect. Now, I hope that a lot of Indians can push hard to get it changed at the international level, you know. I mean, that committee in 1894, not a single Indian was on that committee, only the Europeans. How can you have an international standard on a native Indian language? You know, so hopefully people who have some context, or, you know, I think we need to change a lot of things there, you know. Others are good because diacritics help pronounce saying like Krishna. So they have, you know, so it's easy, you know. There's no ana in English, you know. But other than ru, and there are a few more, you know. If they change those, I think the diacritical system is fine. If people use diacritics in their writings, but unfortunately we don't, right? So I don't know. One person cannot change the world, you know. But anyway, going back to the subject matter, Gita is an unsurpassable, profound shastra, scripture, Advitiya Granth. And it provides the lessons of practical Vedanta. Now, when one comes to the banks of Gangaji, with whatever patra, small, large, whatever, you know, one always returns paripurna, complete. So in the same way, whether one is a sakami, desire-ridden, nishkami, a desireless, bhaktiman, devotional, vairagyavan, dispassionate, or a gnani, one who is a knower. Taking refuge with their own buddhi rupa patra, intellectual vessel, in the Ganga of Gita rupa amrut, one always returns contented and never empty-handed. There are solutions for all major issues in Bhagavad Gita. If you want to address anger, for instance, chapter 2, shloks 56, 62 and 63, address that. Chapter 5, shloks 26, 16, chapter 16, shlok 1, 2 and 3, chapter 16, shlok 21. So there are so many verses in Bhagavad Gita that will give a solution for individuals facing anger issues, And I can go on and on. If you're a confused person, there are specific verses in the Bhagavad Gita, specific chapters, There's a death of a loved one, same thing. If you're depressed, there are shloks, For depression, in chapter 2, shloks 3, 14 and 21 are very useful, This business management association, a lot of people are business related, And obviously in businesses, people go through discrimination, right? So if you are facing discrimination, you have answer here in Bhagavad Gita, Fear, feeling sinful, greed, laziness, loneliness, losing hope, practicing forgiveness, pride, seeking peace, temptation, if you're demotivated, or uncontrolled mind, forgetfulness. So, Gita is such a practical scripture that everyone can find a solution if they look for it. Now going back to the Upanishads, Upanishads say, Rute Gnanat na mukti. That is, without knowledge, there is no liberation, there is no moksha. And the Upanishads so establish. So this way, Gita, being the ambrosiac milk of the Upanishad from cow, its principal subject is also the attainment of subtler than subtle, supreme bliss, Paramananda, liberation through knowledge. So, we use the word Jeev all the time. So what is Jeev and what is the nature of Jeev? So the first answering the question on Jeev, Jeev is what? Jeev is that conscious element in the body who is the doer enjoyer. The conscious element that is the doer enjoyer is Jeev. Now, Jeev is synonymous with like soul and other things, So it is the embodied Atma, the delimited Atma. It is the pure Atma on whom I-ness sense of the body, senses, mind and the intellect are superimposed due to nescience. Now, Jeev has also been addressed as Jivatma. In the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan has used a number of different terms, Jivatma, Dehi, Shariri, Jiva Sakshi, and of course, in the Western world, soul or spirit. So the soul or spirit that the Western world talks about is our delimited Atma. It is the impure Atma, so to say, It is the pure Atma that is bound by ignorance and ego, So just as there is no distinction, when you take a number of pots, just as there is no distinction between the pot enclosed space and the pervasive space, same thing with Jeev and the Paramatma. It's only the adjunct body. If the adjunct body is removed, nothing is, all it is Paramatma, So what is the nature of Jeev? What is the nature of Jeev? And I think Vedanta uses the word Asti Bhati Priya. It's also synonymous with Sat Chit Anand also, So Asti Bhati Priya means existent, conscious bliss. Asti means the sense of perpetual existence, the sense of astitva, existence, of being, the sense of sat, reality. What is bhati? What does bhati mean? Bhati means the sense of knowledge, illumination, wisdom, the sense of consciousness, bhatitva. Now I've used the word conscious rather than consciousness. A lot of people have translated Sat Chit Anand, Chit as consciousness. I have interpreted that as conscious, the conscious element. That is the distinction in what I have written versus what you may have seen somewhere else, Now I had to cogitate on that a lot before I came up with the term conscious, that. And Priya, everybody knows what Priya means. Ananda, happiness, bliss. So the other term, as I said, Satchidanand, real conscious bliss, where Sat means that which is real, existent, or true essence. Chit meaning the conscious element, same thing as discussed earlier, and Anand, the same thing that we discussed earlier, All three are considered inseparable from the nature of the supreme imperishable reality or the Brahman. I've used the word supreme imperishable reality to describe the Brahman based on what Bhagavad has said in Bhagavad Gita. So why does Jeev perceive? So Jeev and Paramatma only one. But Jeev perceives non-attainment and separateness. So Vedanta reasons this through three faults: impurity, the word they use is mara, vacillations, vikshepa, and avaran, the covering, the sheath of ignorance, so that these three faults reside in the conscience. Because of those three faults, Jeev perceives non-attainment and separateness from the Param Tattva. So what is the aim? The only aim of Veds is to sequentially remove these faults and make the heart of Jeev realize eternal bliss. So thus was the origination of the three components of the Veds: Karma Kanda, Upasana Kanda, and Jnana Kanda. In sequential order, they are there only to remove faults in the heart. Among them, first, negative impressions or evil inclinations, impurities, mar, also called durvasana. Now that mar dosh can only be removed by karma kanda. That is through desireless actions, nishkam karma. The second fault, fickleness or vacillations or vikshepa, the tossing and turning of the mind. Mind is never stable, with all the moving around different places, That can only be removed by upasana kanda, worship. And the third dosh, the ignorance of the Paramatma, or ignorance of the Paramananda, known as the Avaran dosh. Only Gnan Kanda can burn it through knowledge. Now all of you know Gnan Kanda, being the last part of the Veds, is known as Vedanta. That is the Upanishads. Just as the removal of hunger is only possible by eating food and not by drinking water, and thirst is quenched only by drinking water and not by food, in the same way, the three faults can be removed only by their own respective kants and not by any other kants. Now, just as the beginningless divine Veds that were brought out from the Nishwas, the breath of the Supreme Lord, are Trikandatmak, in the same way, having come out of the blessed mouth of Bhagavan Shri Krishna, the same principles indeed support Srimad Bhagavad Gita. For a discerning, dispassionate seeker, desirous of knowing, it provides spiritual guidance, upadesh, of knowledge. Once the fault of impurity is gone through desireless actions, the fault of vacillations is gone through worship, and through knowledge, the root ignorance of doership ego in the body, mind, and senses of a seeker is burnt. As its reward, he does not remain a doer, he does not remain a karta of the activities, of the karma, of the body, but remains only an observer of those activities. In that state, everything that is done through the body, he's not doing anything. He's not in bondage to those activities. And you can refer to verses 3.27 and 28 on chapter 14, verse 19 and 20, and in chapter 18, verse 17. because the reach of Maya and all the bondages are in the refuge of this delusional superimposition of the body on the Atma. The superimposition is delusional of the Atma on the body. That is the delusional imagination of the body as the Atma. Mithya Dehabhiman or Dehatmavad. Now all of you know the term Maya. I went through a lot of literature and a lot of great writers, Shankaracharya and Vallabhacharya and all that, and sort of came up with the definition of Maya, So the Maya, what is Maya? Maya is the delusive power, Shakti. What kind of Shakti? The power of being, of the supreme imperishable reality, the Brahman. That's what Maya is. It's the Shakti of the Brahman, by which the supreme imperishable reality or the Brahman appears in the space-time as the physical world. That is neither immutable, this world is mutable. However, because we live in the sphere of niche science, we see it as existent. Even though once you reach that state, you'll get the awareness that what we think is real is not real, And I think there is, in my writing, I have talked about the three sattas, Satta means realities, three realities, The highest is the Paramarthik Satta, the transcendental reality, which is the only one that has is the supreme imperishable reality of the Brahman. We live in the ordinary reality, where we see everything, whatever we see it as real. Whatever we observe through our senses, we call it real. And it is ordinary reality, the only way that reality we can have a trikala bhav, absence determination of the existence of what we perceive as ordinary reality, only by realizing the truth or realizing the param tattva. So there's the distinction. Until you achieve and realize the truth, everything that we see is ordinary reality. So the Maya is the object of three kinds of knowledge. According to revealed knowledge, it is unreal. According to reasoning, it is indescribable. And according to us, to the perceptions of the empirical person, it is real. In common uses, of course, Maya is used to express delusion and unreality. So Gita has been deemed, as I discussed earlier, as a Vyavaharik Vedant, practical Vedant. It is also known as the Smruti Prasthan, the starting point or axiom of remembered traditions. And of course, it is among the three canonical texts of Vedanta, Prasthantrayi, having epistemic authority. The other two are Upanishads, known as the Updesh Prasthan, the injunctive scriptures, and the Brahma Sutra, known as the Sutra Prasthan, Nyaya Prasthan or the Yukti Prasthan, the logical text or the axiom of logic. That's what Brahma Sutta provides, Therefore, through the knowledge of the Paramananda, removing ignorance and freeing one from the mortal world of birth and death is the principal subject matter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Now, a number of people have talked about desireless actions as an independent path to achieve reality. I hold the position, and so does Shankaracharya ji and others, those who believe in Advaita Vedanta, that desireless actions or nishkam karma through purity of the conscience is helpful. It is not to be discarded. But it is not an independent path to liberation. A number of modern commentators, and I talked about one earlier, though not referred in the book directly, as I said, why I did that, because I am nowhere near those Mahapurush. For me to put their names and comment would not be appropriate. Though, in the book I have referenced the pages in their work which are being refuted, So they have deemed desireless actions devoid of knowledge as an independent path to achieving liberation. They have made karma yoga, nishkam karma, and the other, the yoga of knowledge and realization, gnana yoga, two separate subject matters of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. One whose acts are desireless, nishkam karmi, having oneness in his body, mind and senses, assumes all activities done through his body, mind and senses as his own. And he offers the fruits of his karma to the Lord, who he considers as someone separate from himself. Vedanta, Bhagavad Gita says they are not separate. They are only one. Such a person with discriminating vision, with the body, mind and senses separate from the Lord, with such conduct, how can he be free from the bondage of birth and death? Though the fruit of the offering of fruits is a pious fruit, punya phala, by which purity of the conscience and fitness, adhikar, for knowledge is acquirable. Still, that status by itself cannot deliver liberation. Because the root of bondage is ignorance attached to the discriminating intellect. Desireless actions being themselves the work of ignorance are not capable of cutting its root, which is the ignorance. There is a tenet in the kingdom of Prakriti that fruit cannot cut the roots of a tree. To cut the roots of a tree, one needs an axe. Therefore, knowledge of oneness can only be the one axe that can cut ignorance. The offering of fruits by itself cannot ever remove ignorance, as desireless actions do not have appropriate tools in their toolbox to cut them. Because the offering of fruits by itself accrues its fruits. And the root of birth and death is a result of accumulated impressions of karma of many births, sanchit karma sanskars. So what is sanchit karma sanskar? So, all of you know the term sanchit, it means accumulated. And the karma sanskar means, and this is where I have pondered a bit, and tried to put something in English that I thought would be more appropriate than what I have seen. So the way I have defined karma sanskar, I've called karma sanskars as dynamic impressions. Not just impression, dynamic impressions of righteous or unrighteous actions. Collectively, they are dynamic psychological imprints left in the subconscious of actions, whether conscious or unconscious, internal or external, desirable or undesirable. They influence a person's nature, response, and state of mind. These imprints are not merely passive vestiges of actions and intentions, but dynamic forces constantly pushing a jeev. These impressions wait to return to the conscious level of the mind, influencing the future in the form of expectations, sense of well-worth, habits, innate dispositions, and emotions, propelling one's life and generating future actions. So in short, they are referred to as behavioral traits, either as default from birth, purvakrit sanskar, or perfected over time through conscious shaping of the conscience. So as long as karma sanskars are well and alive, how can we expect freedom from birth and death? Nishkam karma, by its nature, neither can burn the doership ego, nor can remove ignorance. Then how can one expect liberation from it? However, accepting it as an independent means of liberation, this grave harm, as now the path of knowledge is closed. It is though natural for one to move away from the path of knowledge when in the first place one provides an equal status of knowledge to something else and then considers knowledge unacceptable. Not only that, but also when desireless actions do not remain desireless, then they will not be the real means for the purity of the conscience. Purity of the conscience can only happen after loosening the ego and awakening humility. However, by giving desireless actions equal status as knowledge, one's ego becomes more assertive. In such a state, one cannot maintain a proper level, like a student at a lower level claiming equivalency with a student at the highest level. How can he establish himself steadfast at that higher level?
Start question answering 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Okay. Hold on. Page 140 of my book provides 20 points that synthesizes Bhagavad Gita. Unfortunately, with the time constraint, I didn't realize it. I took so long, The 20 points, if you go through, and then like 3 or 4 pages, If you can make those 3 or 4 pages copied and available, it gives the essence, essentially, of Bhagavad Gita, I was hoping to talk about the purpose of life, and then what the Vedantic scriptures refer to, the pursuit of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. I will not go through those discussions, but the only point I want to touch on is dharma. So the word dharma is derived from the root dhru, meaning to hold, to bear, to carry, to support. Dharanat dharma, that which holds together or supports is dharma. So in this sense, dharma encompasses all ethical, moral, social, and other values or principles and codes of conduct which contribute to the well-being, sustenance, and harmonious functioning of individuals, societies, and nations, and prevent their disintegration. Now there is another term in Vedanta, Rut. So what is Rut? So the dharma signifies behaviors that are in accord with Rut. So what is Rut? Rut is the principle of the natural order which regulates and coordinates the operation of the world and everything within it. It is the principle that makes life and the world possible, and of course it includes religious duties, moral rights, laws, conduct that enable social order, virtues, the right way of living, and responsibilities of each individual that all beings must accept and respect to sustain harmony and order in the world. Now in my writing, I've not used the word dharma as religion. It was never intended. And I have not even used the word Hindu dharma. All my writing, I refer to Sanatan Vedantic dharma. Sanatan, eternal. Vedantic dharma, that's what we follow. What is that Sanatan Vedantic dharma? That dharma there is one that provides darshan, or that which enlightens us on Jeev, Jagat, and Ishwar. So that which enlightens us as to who you are, what the Jagat is, the world is. Now that Jagat means, it is, the Jagat term is much more broader than what we consider as the physical world, the world the worlds that exist in your own minds. So those are all referred to in the word Jagat, and obviously Ishwar. What is the distinction between that, I will not touch on anything else at this point, but we will
See some questions.
yeah. For the benefit of people, I have a whole chapter on ekagrata, concentration of the mind. Because that's what you need to attain oneness with the self, oneness in the Atma. And there are a lot of hindrances, impediments in the way. The mind is so sensitive. The mind is so chanchal that it cannot be controlled. In Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is saying, hey Lord, mind is so sensitive to control, It is very difficult to control. So what I've done is establish a step, to remove. The first thing you need to do is remove the bhavodgar of negative thoughts, the emanation of bad thoughts you want to remove, and bring forth emanation of pure thoughts. But ultimately, it should be the state where there are no thoughts at steadfast level. That's only then that you can have oneness within the self. Now, to assist in that accomplishment of ekagrata, as Atul Bhai has indicated, I have about 10 prayers, to remove all those impurities from individuals, But the most important one, which I've done, is a universal prayer. So if you get a chance, take a look at that universal prayer, And what I've done is also extracted it and put it on the last page, because that is so general that everybody, no matter whether you're a Christian or a Muslim or whatever religion you believe in.
Universal prayer.
Yeah, is that similar to what? Yeah, okay. So what I did there was 16 and 17 chapters. They talk about qualities, thoughts and everything of sattvic, rajasic and tamasic individuals. So I took the qualities of the sattvic person. So the prayers that I've developed are there to make one sattvic, essentially, So I not to hurt anybody by thoughts, words and deeds, Also talked about what kind of foods you ought to eat, things like that,
So,
Anyway.
Yeah, thank you very much. You can be there if you
Okay.
because we'll raise,
We can be there,
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. It's a very comprehensive and still elaborate explanations about his book on the intent of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. He has tried to explain the various constructs and the concepts that are the part of the book. He started with the Sanskrits because he has mentioned a lot about the pronunciations and the guidance of the various Sanskrit sloka, that in how the slokas should be pronounced in the right connotations. And he also explained about the interpretations of what Lord Krishna explained to Arjuna, and we all are Arjuna, that it should be taken in the right perspective in the present circumstances of the practical reality of life. And that's why I think what you emphasize is the Bhagavad Gita is the ultimate 360-degree solutions, that how we should live a life, and the part of the struggle in a life, part of the stress in a life, part of the confusions in a life, okay, and those, how that battle in a life, how we can fight that battle of life in our day-to-day living. And therefore, this book I found is a very magnificent and unique book, whereby you have also, before starting the each chapter of Bhagavad Gita, you have also given the essence of each chapter in the beginning. So if those who don't have a time to go into the detail of it, one can go through the small comprehensive essence of those chapters. He was very much emphatic about these days yoga and yoga parlor you can see everywhere universally, and the right word is yoga, and yoga is nothing but the it's a connecting individual being to the universal being. And that's why the one questions that આપણે બધાને એક ક્વેશ્ચન હોઈ શકે કે how કૃષ્ણ ભગવાને 18 ચેપ્ટરની અંદર પાછળ સફિક્સ યોગ લખેલું છે, ઇન્ક્લુડિંગ અર્જુન વિષાદ યોગ. નાવ ડિપ્રેશનની અંદર પણ એ યોગ છે એવું કન્ફ્યુઝન થાય. But that's no, depression is one which leads the path of ultimately for the solution of depressions and confusions. You lead the path of yoga, and that can give you the liberation and renunciation. So again, coming to the liberation word, I think you have explained what is the liberation and what are the types of liberations, I think. So if you can show some more light, what is the difference between the ordinary human being and the person who is self-enlightened person, right? What is how his vision differs from the vision of ours, right? The five senses that normally we live through for the objective world, and now coming back to withdrawal of the senses and going back to the self, and that is the oneness feeling, and that gives the calmness of the mind, focused mind, the concentrations, and whatever the possibility of inner potential possibilities, it is infinite, which is unlimited, which can be explored further through oneness of mind, and your vision can definitely, the horizon of the visions and the life can expand. And other, he said that life, the world outside is nothing but your own manifestation. That's how Lord Krishna, when he yawned and saw the universe in his mouth to Lord Arjuna, he meant to say the whole world is reciting you, in your interpretation, in your perceptions, power, and for accordingly the diversity that the Almighty has created, that the world is as you see it, as your think is, right? So your thought power has a great, immense potential for the creations or the destruction, depending on what he said is the negative thoughts. How to control those negative thoughts. Various prayers are mentioned in this book very comprehensively. And ultimately, it is, Gita is nothing but the management of mind. Okay, how you manage your thoughts and be watchful and be aware, and let your awareness of awareness keep a track of your thoughts. Okay, they say that daily we have 40 to 60,000 thoughts, random thoughts, and out of which 90% are a repetitive thought. And if you say the mobile data is a lot of garbage and waste, and so do the mind has. Okay, and how to throw away by infusion of the positivity, and thereby the Gita comes to our rescue and resort as a true seeker of life. And I believe that this book is available on Amazon, and also AMA Library has equipped this book, because recently launched on 24th, and those who want to borrow, I think AMA Library is already equipped with this book. There are about 570 pages in this book. Any question that you have, it's a very vast ocean, right? And out of એવું કહે છે ને કે બધા દેવ અને દાવાનોએ દરિયામાંથી પછી અમૃતનો ઘડો લીધો, તો this is what the nectar of pot that we are searching from the ocean. And for that, any questions you have about very immensely and very nicely that you have explained the various jargons and a concept and what you have covered in this book. Unfortunately, the time is too short for you also to explain those things. We understand this reality. And in questions, we will take one or two questions before we conclude. Yes, please.
Honorable Sri Bharat Patel, I thank you for your immense knowledge and the deep understanding given to us of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and Sri Atul Bhai also. My question to you is, that when Arjuna says, यदि माम प्रतिकारम शाश्वत संसामे धात्यास्तमे हंतुष्मे तन्मे संभव. And when the Lord says that nama karmani limpanti nama karme phaleshpuha iti mayot pijanati karma pinam sabadhyate. So how can we as human beings implement this journey of the Bhagavad Gita in our life? Through the depression of Arjuna, and he takes us to the very instant of karma and purpose in our life. I would like to listen from you. Thank you.
I didn't fully understand your question because I guess the mic, the sensitivity of the mic. But before I respond to you, Atul bhai, I think you asked a question, the examples, and the example is clearly spoken about in Bhagavad Gita, and Bhagwan gives example of Janak. Janak Raja, Janak is a realized person. He has separated his I from mind. That's all it is needed. Bhagavad Gita tells you to separate the mindness from the I. So what is that I? That I is only the Atma. I is not this body. But because the Atma is so close to the mind and intellect, the qualities of the Atma are superimposed in the mind and the intellect. So that is what is needed to be removed. And the I, once you recognize that I is not this body or any possessions, the distinction between I and mind, if you can remove, what happens is that Jeev takes birth and death because of its relationship with the body, of the world of I-ness and mindness. The world of I-ness and mindness is because of its relation, Jeev's relationship with the body. And why do we have that? We have it because we see ourselves limited. So the parichinna drashti, the limited vision, where we see ourselves only as the body and the rest of the world is separate from us, where in fact what Bhagavan is saying, this whole world is a vivarta of the Param Tattva. It is simply an imaginary thing. Just like you see a snake in a rope at night without beginning and end. You feel that there's just, so the real part is just the rope. So this world that we exist in is similar to the snake, and the reality that exists is like the rope, Now, can you repeat your question so that I can...
Briefly and concise, what's your question?
Sir, I would like to say, the 45th sloka of the Bhagavad Gita says that yadi mam pratikaram shastram shastraptama dhatrashtanga hantusme temasam taparam. It reflects Arjuna's depression. And then when Krishna says, yadi haram na vakteyam jatu karmandriyataha mama vaktmanu vartante manusya parta sarvata. So sir, how can we as human beings, in the common sense, can learn from the depression of Arjuna and make our life better towards the karma of
See,
Krishna?
what happens, that's very simple. What Bhagavan is saying, that people follow what Shrestha people do. So it is the onus on the part of the people who are famous, who have a high standing in the society. People always look up to them. Whatever they do, people follow. And that's what that shlok Bhagavan is saying. And that is what Bhagavan is saying, that I have to act. If I don't act, then people will follow me. And you don't want to be a non-act, you have to act. But what Bhagavan is saying is your actions has to be without attachment. Okay? Do not have attachment. You do your job the best possible way. Do not worry about the results, because the results are not in your hands. The results are a function of so many factors. So you do the best you can and leave the result to me, the Lord, And every human being should try to set an example so people can emulate them. Does that sort of answer your question?
Good morning, sir. What is the easiest and best way of the out of the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita in the physical world for today's life? What is the easiest and best way to reach the universe God, unconsciously or consciously? Can you just guide us?
Okay.
There is no easy way.
Yeah, Bhagwan has said it very clearly that in thousands of people, only a few make an effort. Among a few who make an effort, hardly someone can achieve that status. So it is a bhakti yoga, but bhakti yoga by itself is not enough. What does bhakti yoga do? Bhakti is before the enlightenment. What the bhakti yoga does, after you remove the durvasana and all that stuff, impurities, bhakti helps you to provide concentration of your mind. That's what bhakti does. The fruit of bhakti is concentration of the mind. But ultimately you still need the knowledge that you are Him. You are the Param Tattva.
I mean to say the unknown person, the illiterate person also, if for 24 hours he can chant the God name, immediately he can reach to the God, universe.
Yeah.
That I understand.
No, you're right, absolutely correct. Bhakti helps individuals to purify themselves. And I think without a purified heart, it is not possible to reach that state. Now, as I said, not everybody is capable, I have been trying for many, many years, and I'm still a seeker, So, and there's nothing wrong to be a seeker, as long as you try to put things in practice in your own life, But bhakti does help. Bhakti will take away your mind from the world, all the issues that you're facing in the world, It'll try to help you be away from the anxieties of the world,
Thank you. It's only nothing but Krishna says, live a righteous life. And whatever the bondages of the karma that we have been carrying to the myriads of the past life, that you get redeemed and free from those bondages. And for that, the inner purity that you may derive through your intense devotions, egolessness and surrendering completely to the Almighty can lead you to the salvation ultimately, right? That is all the concept of brief about it, what your question is. Actually. Now, I thank you very much everybody here for your august presence in sparing your Sunday morning. Today morning itself, I think in his, when book was launched, Swami Paramatmanand Saraswati, who was also present and one of the speakers there, he has sent me 1 minute video. And that's very much relevant to this. So I'll just play this 1 minute. One patient is going to the doctors, and what doctor has advised to the patients for his various problems of diabetes, depressions, and stress in life. Let's listen.
I have listened to your all the complaints that you told me. I have then examined you very carefully, and I have come to the conclusion that all your ailments, that is, you are passing sleepless night, you are feeling depressed, you are irritable, you have got indigestion, acidity, constipation, obesity and diabetes also. These what I call are lifestyle diseases. You don't require a doctor to treat them. If you read Bhagavad Gita properly and follow it correctly, most of your ailment will disappear. You will be surprised that in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna has given advice what you should eat, what you should not eat, how you should eat, everything he has advised. If you follow that, you will not require any doctor or medicine. Now that you have come to me, I have examined you.
It's going on.
I am giving you few tablets, but along with that, I am giving you a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. You read it very carefully, follow it very carefully, and come to me after 4 months and tell me what changes.
Okay, so that's Bhagavad Gita is the ultimate remedy to many of our psychosomatic lifestyle disease. That is what senior doctor has prescribed to his patients. And Bharat Bhai, we are indeed grateful to you, sir, for sparing your valuable time. And we wish the very best to you on the launch of this wonderful creation of yours. And it will be useful to thousands of people who have benefit to acquire this book and grow through and churn. And as doctor said, he has given to his patient this book. You also become doctors and distribute these books in the maximum depression patients are in USA, so that their life can be improved, and ask them to meet after 4 months what is their experience of a life. And thankful to AMA for organizing this program. Thankful to respected Sri Rohit Bhai for introducing today's author, and to Mr. Arya as a president who has managed and organized this show, and for all of you having sparing the Sunday morning valuable time. Is your shows that you are a true seeker and your intent is to learn something for the improvement, development and progress of the life. And we wish the very best of you for your future life. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks for giving me an opportunity. Thank you very much.